911 operators of Reddit. What was the most petty call you have ever received? Once got a call about a stolen matchbook from the caller's front porch. Ashtray and cigarettes were left under shade. Caller was so worked up and concerned about a prowler that I sent an officer over. Matches were located in the garden where they had fallen over the railing. Caller immediately demanded the officer leave the property. 911 operator here. Honestly, 90% of what we deal with is petty. Things that I would never think to call 911 People are calling. My brother threw a tube sock at me. My neighbor is mowing his lawn. He's doing it to annoy me. It's 11 AM on a Saturday morning. My son brought his girlfriend over. I don't like her. Can you remove her from the house? Ma'am, is she being threatening or violent in any way? No, I just don't like her. Those are some of the more memorable from the past week or so. Honestly, if it's something you're interested in, see if your local 911 dispatch center will allow you to sit with a dispatcher. It'll be enlightening to what we really have to deal with. County 911, where's your emergency? My neighbor is mowing his yard in pajamas. And I don't think that's very necessary. Excuse me, ma'am, is he threatening you or harming you? No, but he's nearly nude mowing his yard. Can you get a cop here to tell him to put clothes on? How about I'll let an officer give you a call about it, ma'am? Sure, that'll be fine. I'm tired of seeing old shirtless men mowing their yards early morning. My number is blah blah blah. Okay, I'll give this to the officer directly. Hangs up. Me on the radio. County 911 to North County. 939 go ahead. Have some telephone traffic regarding a shirtless old man mowing his yard. Subj is requesting you to give her a call. Sensible laugh over radio, sure thing. I am ready to copy. Give him her number. 5 minutes later. 939 to County 911. Go ahead. It's gonna be a civil matter. She told me she's going to start mowing her yard naked. I'll be 10 to 8. Me. In tears of laughter 10-4. 1432. Our CAD is being updated and this happened when I couldn't send texts over the CAD software itself. Otherwise I would just thrown the comment in the narrative and he cold read it. Fun times. That would be the one that got me fired. Actually they let me resign, but it's essentially the same thing in this case. A woman called in a man walking down the street in her neighborhood. Not being loud or suspicious or disruptive in any way, just walking along the sidewalk. Ma'am, what exactly is the problem then? If he's just walking down the street, well he just shouldn't be walking here. They have no business in our neighborhood. So she called the police on 911 and not the non-emergency line because a black man was minding his own business walking down the street. She just kept saying he shouldn't be walking here. And eventually I snapped back with, would you feel better if he was running? It's one of those moments where you immediately think, damn, now I have to find a new job. Not a 911 operator, but I do mapping for 911. An operator had a call once from someone that was extremely concerned that emergency services wouldn't be able to find his house if he ever needed them. Not a reason to call the emergency number, but still a valid concern. The call gets kicked over to me, and I'm on the phone with him going through a checklist to verify the location of his address. I ask him a few times what prompted his concerns about emergency services not being able to find his house, and he just mumbles something like, I just know they won't. I eventually get things worked out. His address is in our system and in the correct location, and I assure him that we will be able to find his house. There's a few seconds of silence on his end. Then he says, well, if the police know where I live and can get here, why the fuck couldn't Pizza Hut find my house last night? He hung up before I could respond. I work at an R&D. We received a patient who arrived by ambulance because of a bite on his foot, which he suspected might come from a venomous spider/scorpion, etc. We live in a country where there are no venomous spiders or scorpions. Upon arrival, he realized that he'd have to wait for a doctor to attend to him, as he wasn't exactly prioritized in triage, so he left. Wow, such emergency. Almost all of them, honestly. The worst are the people who won't parent their fucking kids. The worst was probably when some cunt called because his kid wouldn't go to his room. There was also this guy who called regularly because of kids playing on four-wheelers. They were in a rural area with adult supervision, all the proper safety equipment, nowhere near the guy's house, and were breaking literally no laws. He called all the time, even after being advised to stop. Honestly, I hate that he was never fined or executed for it. Let's see. We also get a lot of suspicious person calls. It's always just a bunch of kids hanging out, the two black people in our area, or the two Sikhs, though the callers would say Muslims. Honestly, people are stupid. The job would have been infinitely easier if we could tell people that their call is fucking retarded, and if they would actually be punished for it. Not exactly 911 as this was in Australia, so it was 000. However, I spoke to some ambulance officers once and asked a similar question. Their response was, well, we once attended someone's house who called us because they had a nightmare. Had a good chuckle at that one. Not dispatch, but EMT. Worst call in this regard we ever had. My partner and I show up in the morning to find out we have a trainee on our shift. First radio during his EMT school. Cool. Nice kid. About 2 hours later, we get paged out for prostate problems. No further information. Alright. Fun. We show up at an assisted care facility, not full nursing home. Think more apartments that have a nurse on staff. Make contact with patient. I send the student to do vitals while I start questioning him. Is he having pain? Discomfort? More urine output? Less urine output? Funny feelings on urination? Discharges? Anything? All negative. Finally, I tell him I need some help. Why does he think he is having prostate problems? Well, it's Saturday morning, and he just watched a medical show that mentioned it's important that men his age get their prostate checked once a year, and it had been about 15 months since he had a prostate exam, and he called his primary care physician and couldn't get an appointment until Monday morning. In over 5 years of EMS, this is one of like 3 patients I ever tried to talk out of going to the hospital, but he wanted transport. So we did. We radio the hospital ahead when bringing in a patient. This is the only time I ever said, in front of the patient, I'm sorry for what I'm about to tell you. We get to the hospital, and as we are moving the patient into a bed, this older male nurse storms into the room and starts laying into me. Why? He thought I was joking when I called in the report. When I assured him that it was legit, he turned to the patient. I can't remember his exact words, but it was something like this. You actually called a motherfucking ambulance to bring your sorry ass into the emergency room for a fucking prostate exam that you couldn't wait 2 days for. The patient looked stunned, but nodded. The nurse turned to the tech that had entered the room. Get this fucking asshole a prostate exam and get him the fuck out of my ear. He then slammed down clipboard he was holding on the counter. As we were cleaning the ambulance, my trainee looked at me. Is it always like this? He asked, hope dying in his eyes. I clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome to EMS. Yeah, like Gingerska had said, it's hard to compare the pettiness and banality of most of the calls we deal with. What is more petty, a 32-year-old male who wants medics for toe pain, someone calling to get the batteries changed on their smoke detector, or a neighbor dispute over tree leaves? Who can say? One of my favorites was over dog poop. Neighbor 1 let their dog crap in neighbor 2's yard. Neighbor 2 went and picked it up and placed it in neighbor 1's yard. At this point, neighbor 1 called us to report watching this happen. Then, against the best advice I could muster, went outside to confront. Then I got to listen to them both yell at each other, threaten each other, and continue to hot potato the turd back and forth across their property line until police arrived. Another gem a few years back was a guy who stabbed his own mother with a fork for eating his hot pocket he had microwaved, and felt entitled to it. I think I may be one of these. I called 911 because there was a dazed bat in my yard flopping around in the middle of the day, and I was concerned it was rabid and didn't want the dog getting at it. They gave me the non-emergency number and a cop came over, scooped him up, and gently placed him in the woods nearby. I know I could have done the same thing, but I didn't want to get attacked or sick, and the officer was more than happy to help. Calling the cops was my last line of defense, but I had to due to the following. My town has no animal control branch of law enforcement. I was unable to find anything for neighboring towns either. All the third-party animal control services were either unresponsive or wanted an expensive premium. The non-emergency line number wasn't displayed on my town's website. Not the operator, but I have a relevant story. I was in the waiting room with a particularly bad kidney stone. I had already been there 3 hours and the waiting room wasn't really that full. I had already gone through triage, so I was wondering what the fuck. I go up to the receptionist type person and ask her how much longer it will be. She responds with, "Oh, you were next, but someone came in by ambulance with a sore throat." An ambulance for a fucking sore throat. It was at that moment I lost faith in humanity. Luckily I was called in about 10 minutes later, and 10 minutes after that I had my sweet deloaded